This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin. Today, I'm excited to reintroduce you to Lynn Hightower. Lynn is the author of numerous thrillers, including the Sonora, Blair, and Lena Padget detective series. Her internationally bestselling novels have been included in the New York Times list of notable books, the London Times bestseller list, the W.H. Smith Fresh Talent Awards, and the Shamus Award. She also teaches master novel classes in the UCLA Extension Writing Program and works as a manuscript consultant writing coach for novelists. She joins me today on Uncorking a Story to talk about her career and latest book, The Beautiful Risk. Welcome back to Uncorking a Story, Lynn.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. And just remind me, Lynn, where does your story as an author begin?
When I was in the 5th grade, living in Richmond, Virginia, and instead of doing history and geography and math, I was working on my first novel.
First novel in 5th grade?
My first novel in 5th grade is called Karen MacDonald and the Mystery of the Haunted Castle. Sounds like me, doesn't it? And my teacher discovered what I was up to. And she was actually quite lovely. The schools in Richmond, Virginia are very good and they're very strict. And they have very high academic standards, which I just sloughed off and didn't worry about. But she asked permission to read it. And I said, okay. And she was very nice about it. She didn't say, she read it and she brought it back to me and she said, "This is such lovely, excellent work. I am so proud of you. I know you will be a novelist one day. Would you like to write a serial story for a class newspaper that we can put together?" And that's what we did. She did that. I won't say just for me. It was for the whole class, but she said she'd been thinking about it. And what she wanted me to do was have an episode and an ongoing story for our weekly newspaper, which I think is just the most wonderful thing a teacher could do.
That is, that encouragement, I think, is so important. And coming at such a young age as well, that must have put a lot of wind in your sails.
It did, but I naturally had a lot of wind in my sails. I was absolutely sure that I was fabulous. I mean, I had to become an adult to go, hey, wait a minute, maybe not. But at that age, I had a mother that was like, yes, let's buy you books. Let's get you a desk. You still have to do the dishes. But, and so she said I was fabulous and I saw no reason not to believe her at that age anyway.
There you go. Well, I'm certainly with all your accolades, and many other people think you're fabulous as well.
Thank you. My dog does, for sure.
Well, it's kind of in their job description, right? They have to think we're pretty fabulous.
They do. They do.
It's like the greatest thing when I come home. The only living creature in my house who's typically excited to see me, walks on 4 legs and barks. So,
what kind of dog do you have?
We have a Labrador Retriever.
Fabulous dogs. When I was a single mother with 3 teenagers, the only person that was glad to see me when I got home was the dog. I had a giant golden retriever, and I got her when I became a single mother, and she helped me raise the kids, and they called her the nanny.
Oh, that must have been hard when she crossed over the Rainbow Bridge, I imagine.
It was crushing.
Yeah. We had a golden too. The golden was named Riley. She was with us. She was 16 years when she finally, transitioned, as they say. And, she was a fighter. She did not want to go. She just loved the family so much.
Oh, I've just seen that.
Hanging on.
Yeah. They're the best. They're just the best.
I think they really, I have no offense to Murphy if he can hear me, but golden, there's nothing like a golden retriever. Yeah.
Well, actually, now I have German Shepherds.
Oh, yeah?
I have to say they are the most extraordinary dogs. They're more of a lifestyle than a dog. Okay. Because they're very intense and very intelligent, and their connection with you is so incredible. And the dog I wrote about in the book, Leo, the shepherd, was my shepherd, Leo. Okay. He was real, and everything I wrote about him in the book was true. But boy, he was a handful.
I can imagine. So it seems like even in that first book you were talking about in fifth grade, there was kind of a supernatural or horror component to it. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a haunted castle.
A haunted castle. So where does this fascination with haunted castles and that kind of stuff come from for you?
Oh, I just think it's so intriguing, the unknown, and that it lurks all around us. And some of it is so very beautiful and cool, right? And some of it is quite terrifying and quite scary. And I just can't leave it alone.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, why not? It's fun to think about, because it's mysterious, right? It's perfect fodder for storytelling.
It really is. And, having lived in at least 2 haunted houses, you can say this isn't real all you want, but it's happening in my house and I'm not loving it.
Right.
I'm going to write about it for sure. Do I want to live with it? Not so much.
So lightning struck twice with you with haunted houses then.
It did. But I try to be more careful.
So how does that happen? I mean, was it something that followed you from one house to another, or was it just luck of the draw?
No, one house was in a historic area that was just full of haunted places. And after I lived there a month, I went down in the basement and I found a jar of holy water. And I'm like, oh, this can't be good. And we didn't live there very long, luckily, because it was very dark. Whatever was there was very dark. And I remember after I moved out, about 2 years later, I got someone that came in over my website and they said, hey, I understand that you used to live in this house and I love your books. And can you tell me why there's a jar of holy water in the basement? And I'm like, okay, let's talk.
Did you ever have to use the holy water?
No, I left it alone.
Okay.
I picked it up, put it down and said, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to leave it here. And now I'm going to be worried why they had it.
Yeah.
Why they had it there, And it was a very haunted place. The dogs would not come in the bedroom. I would come home and find all the lingerie pulled out of the drawers and in the floor, which wasn't nice, which wasn't fun.
No.
And, there were booming noises at night that seemed to come from nowhere. And my husband would just, we'd wake up and I'd go, what is that? And he says, he was French. He would say, I don't know. And he'd roll over and go back to sleep. I'm like, no. And he said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, could you run around in circles and panic with me? He says, I have to get up early. No.
No. Yeah. The French not known for their backbones,
Mm-mm. Oh, no, he had plenty of backbone.
I'm
He had
kidding.
plenty of backbone. He just didn't care.
No.
He was just like, I'm sorry, whatever this is, it's not going to be my problem. I have to get up early.
Got to go to work.
Yeah, he wasn't scared of it at all. He just took it in stride, which I found really bizarre.
Well, what can you share with us about The Beautiful Risk?
The Beautiful Risk is set in Annecy, France, which is my favorite place in the entire world. And it opens with Junie Lagarde, who has been a widow for 9 months. Her French husband died in a small plane crash on Mount Blanc. What fascinates me about Mont Blanc is that it's the most dangerous mountain in the world. It's not the tallest, it's not the most difficult to climb, although it can be formidable. It's just more people die there than anywhere else in the world. And she gets a call from a police captain in France who says, we have some drone footage to show you, because her hearing dog, Leo, was with her husband in the crash. And he pulled her husband out, and then he took off when the rescue people came, and he disappeared into the mountain terrain. And she went, she couldn't find him. She's devastated. And he says that we have drone footage that the wolves are coming back, right? And they're going after farm animals, and they get footage of watching to see and tracking them. And he said, we've got drone footage of a man who looks like he's dressed like your husband, trying to impersonate your husband. We know he cannot be your husband. And he is holding your dog on a leash. Can you look at this footage and tell us if you know this man? So she looks at it and she knows, no, it can't be her husband, but he's wearing her husband's coat that disappeared from his office 6 months before he died. And he's got her dog. And so what the captain tells her is, well, we have determined that this plane crash was sabotage. We're investigating. And she says, I'm coming to France. I'm coming to get my dog.
All right. And that's where it goes, that's where it begins.
That's where it begins. This guy is very scary. He was obsessed with her husband, and now he's obsessed with her.
Oh, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. How did the story come to you, and when did it come to you?
Oh, my goodness. I love France, and I wanted to set a story in France, and my husband had died, and I wanted to write about that because I don't follow the grief rules. I annoy everyone, which, is one of my skill sets. And I refuse to be widow Barbie. And
did Mattel ever come out with a widow Barbie?
I don't know, but if they did, it wouldn't be me, because I'm not doing it the way they tell you to do it. And I wanted to write about that because what I found was that grief brings the most incredible creative fire. All righty. And I wanted to spend time in France, and COVID had hit and I couldn't go. So I'm like, well, I'm going to let my character, Junie Lagarde, go. I'm going to give her the same hearing loss I have, which I always kept very secret. And I thought, all right, out of the closet. She's got a hearing loss like I do. She's got a hearing dog like I do. She isn't me. I only wish I was Junie Lagarde. I think she's so cool. I love her. And it was very therapeutic to write because she went to France. She dealt with enormous danger. What I really wanted to do was just escape. I wanted to write this adrenaline-fueled, firing all cylinders heroine, right? With her fabulous dog, and she's back to the wall, and the things she does to survive are jaw-dropping. And revenge, oh yeah, which was great fun. And she's got her dog, but, it's kind of like the first John Wick movie, except the dog wins. Okay. And the dog absolutely wins. And the dog is based on my own Leo, who was just that fabulous.
Yeah. So writing really helped you through a very difficult period of your life, it sounds.
It feels like my path of survival because I didn't have to live in the real world. I was writing better than I've ever written before. I had a whole lot of opinions on grief. I had a whole lot of opinions on hearing loss. And I had so much fun because, Junie Lagarde would say things I'd never say. Well, I might say them now. She's such a good role model. And she was so uncompromising, and I loved that. And it was lovely to write about Leo. And if she's in France, I'm in France, right? So it just felt like I was walking right behind her, living through the book. And that was where I wanted to be.
Oftentimes we think about writing as an escape for readers, which of course it is.
It is.
But writing is also an escape for writers.
It's the ultimate escape. If you think reading is an escape, write a novel. I think everybody should be writing a novel. I think it's one of the most fabulous things a human can do to have a wonderful life. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I encourage everyone to write a novel. It is therapeutic. It does give you perspective, but it's also just fun. I don't want to live in the real world 24 hours a day. I want to live in the novel, and I want to tell myself the story I wish someone would tell me.
Yeah.
And I want it to be a fun escape.
Well, that's a good litmus test, right? Is this a story you would want to read? And
Exactly.
yeah,
This to me is the ultimate story. I would love to pick up a book like that, and get lost in it. That's
yeah.
my first test. Yeah.
And this idea of like grief fueling the writing process. I lost my brother earlier this summer,
I'm
and
very sorry. I lost a
thank
brother too. Yeah.
yeah, and it's I mean just horrible.
Yeah.
Cancer is a stupid jerk, which is what I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Which is what that was one of his catchphrases. Like whenever he would cough, he would just say "stupid jerk." So
I love
I've got
that.
this idea in my head that cancer is a stupid jerk, and I'm gonna do something with that someday.
You
But
should. You should. For me, and I think for a lot of people, you will find that grief fuels a creative fire that's thrilling. Nobody tells you that aspect of it. They say, "Oh, it's this, it's that." And you have 6 weeks to get through it, and you should go take tango lessons, and it'll all be fine. And then it's all such big fat lies.
right,
Everything I can tell you about grief is a big fat lie, and mostly what they tell you is to make everybody around you feel better.
yeah. But what I'm thinking about is almost like exploring and just reflecting on that time
Yes.
when he was sick and struggling, and
Mm.
the lessons that he taught me by going through that process.
Which
And
are, I imagine, poignant and so important.
yeah, just like conversations we had, yeah, up
Yeah.
until like the very, very, very end. And just like reflecting on those. And I want to do something with that in a very respectful way, through
Mhm.
fiction, not necessarily, a memoir or
Fiction
something like that. But
fiction will give you a little bit of distance,
yeah,
and, what I found was that my character would say things, and I would be revising it and saying, "Well, I don't remember writing it," but it's so true. It was like she gave voice to things that I hadn't quite figured out, and it really helped me, you know? And I don't think going through something like this is what people think. I think there's a lot of I hate to say the gifts of grief, but that's what it
yeah,
is. Mhm.
yeah.
It's
I
not a
mean,
phrase I love.
I interviewed a therapist years ago who wrote a book called "Grief is Good." But it kind of reflecting on like the lessons grief can teach us and how to reframe certain things so that they are positive. Um, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating.
I think it's fascinating, and I prefer there's also a lot of humor. The things that people say to you when you're newly bereaved are such a train wreck sometimes. I find that hilarious, and if I read any articles on grief, that's what I wanna look. What awful things did people say to you?
That's right.
Because they don't mean to, and I'm not mad at them for saying it, but the things they say are just they're so bad.
Oh, I
They're
I
so
agree.
bad.
And I think
But
people just feel obligated to say something when they really don't have to say anything at all. There's really
no,
not much to say.
I agree with you. I think what they feel obligated to do is fix it for you, and you can't fix grief. I had to learn that the hard way. And so really the best thing to me is just, "I'm so sorry." That's all you need. But I'm not mad at people, but you know what my favorite one was that someone said to me at my husband's funeral? A woman says to me, "Why is everybody talking to you and ignoring me?" And I'm like, "Gee."
Wow.
I'm just like, there was a part of me that loved it. There was a part of me that was like, I could not have made that up. That is so good. I'm going to have to use that in a book somewhere. Thank you.
That's a special form of narcissism right there.
I know. That's like, oh, say you could be a total character.
No, it is. And it's like some people would be like, oh, you just need your distractions. And I would be like, you know what? I don't want distractions. Like, I want to feel what I'm feeling
Oh,
because
you're
what I'm
so
feeling,
smart.
what I'm feeling is normal. Like, I should be missing he was one of my closest friends, right? So it's like, I
Y-
should be missing him. I should feel sad about this. Why would
Right.
I want to mask that? Because all that's going to do is, have me lash out at somebody, later
It's
on
going,
when I,
it also means you miss out on the things you figure out while, I honestly am the only person I know that gets up early to think, which sounds really ridiculous, but I do because when someone you love dies, you have a lot of things to think about and to process. And I refuse to follow the meditation rules because they don't work for me. And I'm not going to sit cross legged and hold my hands up because I find that incredibly uncomfortable. and annoying, and you can't drink coffee when you're doing that, right? And I don't try and clear my mind, because I think that means you're wrestling with the brain, and it's humanly impossible to clear your mind. Why do they tell you that? It's so stupid. Unless it works for you, in which I say go for it. And I just let the thoughts go and come a million miles a minute, or be quiet, or be still. But you be still and sit with it. And I think it's so crucial to do that if you can bear it. And I think it was very smart of you to do that. And you're right. People don't want you sitting and thinking. And I didn't want to see anybody or talk to anybody or go anywhere. And that makes people uncomfortable. So basically I would say, okay, I'm blocking you. You can't call me, text me, email me. And if you come to the door, they won't hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got pretty ruthless.
Yeah, I found myself sleeping a lot. And,
Sleep is exhausting.
It is. And it's like, it's physically and mentally and
everything.
Yeah, and it hits you at weird times, but it's like my body just needed rest. And, and somebody was like, you're sleeping a lot. I'm concerned. I'm like, I can't help it. I'm like,
you're sleeping a lot. I'm concerned. How about you're sleeping a lot? Good for you.
Right.
Because you know what? Here's the thing. When you're grieving, you know what you need. And nobody else does. And we have a world full of people who say, now listen, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't keep all their stuff. Hey, I've got a drawer full of my husband's old socks and nobody's taking them away from me. And if people don't like it, well, just, go live your life, right? And the things they think you should do, if they don't work for you, just say, no, go away. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You needed the sleep. It's wonderful that you got it.
Yeah, and I have a kind of a general rule of thumb, which is you should never wake up somebody when they're sleeping. Like,
I love that.
I think it's a good rule. I wish people would obey it.
I do too.
But it's like if somebody, and I remember so we have triplets. When they were babies, they were premature.
Oh my goodness!
And they did not sleep well. So one day, this is probably, I don't know, 8 months in, when they had started putting on weight, they were kind of out of the woods. One of them slept till like 10 o'clock in the morning, which is unheard of. And we got nervous. We're like, oh, this baby's usually up at 6:30. Yeah. So we shake her to make sure that she's okay. So we shake her and she's not waking up, but she's breathing and, she's not blue. And we shake her. And then she opens her eyes and just starts bawling. And I tell the story it was either my mother or my mother-in-law. And she like smacks me and is like, you never wake up a sleeping baby. Like, what's the matter with you? Why would you do such a thing?
Well, sometimes you have to live through it because you were scared for your baby. But yeah, the baby was outraged. I was getting a really good sleep.
Yeah.
You woke me up.
So why would you do that? And if she could speak, she'd probably say that. Why the hell did you just do that? You stupid man.
She was speaking in cries, and she was saying it very firmly.
What is that picture over your right shoulder? What is that? What's that painting of?
Oh, it's just a bistro in France.
Oh.
When I go to France, everybody has on their walls Marilyn Monroe, the Big Apple, New York, T-shirts that say, hello. Like, oh my God. And here I have T-shirts that say, bonjour.
Bonjour.
And I have, places in France or pictures I've taken in France. It's, I think there's a very ongoing love affair between the French and the Americans. And of course, we don't always get along. But secretly, the French think we're very cool. And we know the French are very cool. So, my husband was always so funny because in the U.S., if people criticized France, he wasn't going to listen to it. But when we were in France, if people criticized Americans, he would jump on them so hard and they would never do it again.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of loved that when he would do that. If somebody said something snarky about Americans, he would go, no, you do not say that about Americans. And then he would explain to them why they were idiots. And I would be like, wow, this is so cool.
Very cool. I've only been to France once. I was on a business trip. It was like 48 hours. And I was working. Yeah, this is back in 1999. I was working in a startup situation. and me and the owner, he's like, Mike, we're gonna do Paris by motor scooter. I'm like, and I am not what you would call adventurous, and he, or at least I wasn't at that point in my life. And he's like, no, we're gonna rent these Vespa scooters. We're gonna go all around the city. And I'm like, what? I'm gonna be on the back of yours? He's like, no, you're gonna get your own. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
That's terrifying, actually.
it was terrifying. I mean, just going through the streets of Paris on these scooters, and then it started to rain.
Of course.
And I'm like, oh, we're gonna die. We are not gonna live. But
Mhm.
we stopped off to get a baguette. I mean, what's more French than this? To get a cup of coffee and a baguette, like outside of Notre Dame. And these American girls come up to us and they're like talking English very slowly, as if we, they're like, can you tell us how to get to the metro? And I just look at Nick, I'm like, I could do this. Like I could improv this scene and take advantage of this situation. But the angel on my shoulder won out over the devil. And I said, look, we're American too. And we gave them directions.
Because they really did need to get to the metro.
But I don't know if it was because we had, the scooters, the helmets, having the baguette. I mean, I don't know. But it was funny.
It is. And I don't go to Paris. I go to Annecy or Metz or someplace that's not huge. Okay. Because Paris is, Robert hated Paris. He would say, this is not France. This is not France. This is not really France, and I do like the smaller cities. I do love Annecy because they speak enough English there and I speak enough French that I'm okay. And they're very easy going there, it's just full of people from everywhere. And it's, to me, it's just a perfect place. It's very pretty.
Very pretty. Well, one of the ways I like to get to know my guests a little bit more is through asking a couple questions around pop culture. So, Lynn, I am very curious. When you were growing up, back in the day, things you used to watch on TV, what'd you like to watch?
Oh, the spy shows. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., Coronet Bleu. That was just a short one, but Frank Converse was in it. And he was so handsome. And, all the British spy shows. I watched all of those, and it was absolutely my goal to be a spy.
You wanted to be a spy?
So bad I wanted to be a spy.
What happened? You didn't get a chance to go to spy school, or?
Well, I talked to a friend about it who was in intelligence work. And I said, I just think I should do this. And he says, no, you don't. I said, why? He said, all right. Are you going to do what people tell you? If I agree, right. Do you have any sense of direction? No, I can get lost in the backyard. Right. Will you just swear that your allegiance to this organization, and if you need to betray your friends and family, you will? I certainly will not. And they said, yeah, that's 3 strikes, you're out. You can't go to spy school. Evidently, I'm too opinionated to be a spy.
No spy school for you. I think it's not all that's cracked up to be either.
I don't
imagine
think
it's not like Ian Fleming made it seem.
The books he wrote were a little more realistic. I liked his novels. I mean, the James Bond movies are fun and fantasy, but the novels were a little more interesting. But the last book by John le Carré, it really talked about the dark side and how the operations they did were actually turned out, made things worse and hurt a lot of people. And I mean, the first time I read that book, I just put it down and picked it up and read it again because, and he, I don't think he didn't want that published until after he died. But I thought that was very good insight. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be a spy.
Yeah.
I'm right about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
What about music? What do you like listening to?
The Beatles, the Beatles, the Beatles, the Beatles. I was absolutely insanely in love with John Lennon, and everything was the Beatles for me.
Nothing but the Beatles all day long.
Nothing but the Beatles. It was like the music I had waited to hear all of my life, and I wanted nothing but the Beatles.
I just interviewed an opera singer. She was a professional opera singer. Has to be in her late 70s, early 80s now, but her younger sister was so into the Beatles they went to the Shea Stadium, one of the Shea Stadium shows.
Yeah.
And she's like, I didn't really love the music, but you couldn't hear it anyway over the screaming
No,
of
because,
everybody.
but I thought the screaming was fun. Like, it was like, you just go and you just scream your head off. And I liked, go-go boots and straight, long blonde hair and all of those things. I was really little, so I couldn't really go and do the cool stuff. But I wanted to so bad. And of course, I wanted to go to London and live my life there.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place where you like to read?
Pretty much everywhere because I read a lot. So my favorite places just change. Wherever I am at that moment is where I like to read. I what I do love to do is just to go out to dinner with a book and get a glass of wine and get something nice to eat. And I find it so interesting that someone always wants to talk to me about the book I'm reading.
Interesting.
Yeah. I did it in New York, and the whole table next to me, they just all leaned over and said, "We don't want to interrupt you, but we love that author." And I was doing research for a book on When the Body Says No. And the whole wait staff comes to my table and they're like, "We think we need that book. We think that book will help us feel better. Can you tell us about it?" And these are young ones, right? And then getting out their phones and taking pictures of it and their author. And I told them why I thought it might be helpful for them. It just shocks me how many people are so fascinated by the book you're reading.
Interesting. And does that annoy you when that happens, or
Never, because it's always so kindly meant. It's one reader to another. "Hey, is that cool? Did you love this? Did you love that?" And the really younger ones, some of them haven't read a lot. I had some coffee shop guy come and say, "Can I sit down a minute?" I said, "Sure." He says, "My girlfriend reads all the time, and now I'm reading, and I had no idea how cool this is. Do you have some books you can recommend to me?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's talk about what you like to read." I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't know. I'm evidently some kind of a, beacon for anybody who wants to read.
Yeah, they probably sense it in you that you're a writer. Something probably gives it away. Who knows?
Who knows?
Well, speaking about writing, do you have a favorite place where you like to write?
Two places. I get up very early in the morning for an early morning writing session, 3, 4 a.m. That's just fairly new when I started writing The Beautiful Risk, and take puppy out real quick, get a cup of coffee, and then we run and jump back in the bed together, and then she goes to sleep. She loves these early morning writing sessions. And nobody bothers you at 4 a.m. The world is quiet and dark and a little bit mysterious. And I'll do 3 or 4 hours. And then there's a Ukrainian coffee shop, the Brevede Coffee Company in the Distillery District. And it's just in an old whiskey warehouse. And it's got big high ceilings. It's got a lovely ambiance, and they make fabulous coffee. And they're so nice to me there, because I have this hearing loss, right? And they would always call out the order, and I would always be writing, and A, I wouldn't hear them, and B, I'd be writing. And one day they came to my table and they said, "You never come get your coffee, and we're worried you don't like it." I said, No. I love your coffee. I never hear you when you call it out, and I'm always deep in a scene, and it's just my weird, quirky. They said, "Oh, okay." And so now they don't call it out. They just bring it to me, which is very
that's
kind.
nice.
It is. Nice. Yeah.
And then lastly, if this is my dear younger me question, if you could go back in time, or maybe send a letter to that,
send a letter.
Lynn.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so send a letter to that girl in 5th grade who's writing that first novel. What would you tell her?
I would say, keep writing your novel, move to France as early as possible, right after high school. Try and study there, or right after college, get there as quick as you can. Always have a giant German Shepherd, and make decisions purely by intuition.
Purely by intuition.
Purely by intuition. The older I get, the more I realize that. I think things through up one side, down the other. I'm a big overthinker, and then I'm like, yeah, my gut instinct says this, and that's always the way to go.
Trust the instincts.
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, Lynn, this has been a fun conversation. I assume people can buy The Beautiful Risk wherever books are sold. Is that right?
Wherever books are sold. And you can also go to my website, which is lynnhightower.com. The website and the name are just the same. And there'll be descriptions of the book, pictures of the book, and a really fun video with the dog that stars in the book, which is cool. I love that video, that dog. And it's linked to anywhere you want to buy a book. There are just like 8 links, and you pick where you want to buy a book, and you can click and go.
There you go. I'll be sure to put your website in our show notes so people could just tap on it and go right there.
Thanks.
Lynn, thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.